highest virtues a person can embody. It signifies a gentle heart, a noble spirit, and a compassionate soul. Yet, have you ever noticed that the very kindness you extend to others can sometimes result in contempt rather than gratitude? It's perplexing how what you offer in goodwill can be misconstrued as a sign of weakness. Let's delve into this paradox. Being kind does not mean being submissive. The misunderstanding arises when kindness is not anchored by strength. Too often people equate kindness with a lack of conviction or a willingness to be taken advantage of. Someone who bends too easily, who gives endlessly without considering their own needs or principles, may unintentionally teach others to undervalue their contributions. Human nature, in all its curiosity, tends to test the limits of what it encounters. If you present yourself as someone without boundaries, always forgiving, always yielding, always giving more than is asked, you may inadvertently invite the unscrupulous to see you as nothing more than a means to an end. However, this is not solely their fault. It is also your responsibility to communicate through your actions what you will and will not tolerate. True kindness must walk hand in hand with wisdom. It requires recognizing your own worth and having the courage to set boundaries. Imagine, if you will, a garden. It is a generous and beautiful endeavor. Cultivate flowers for others to enjoy. Yet, if you leave the gates perpetually open, weeds may overrun it, and the careless may trample what you have worked so hard to grow. This is why boundaries are not the adversaries of kindness, but its guardians. When you assertively say no with grace, you are not rejecting the other person. You are preserving the integrity of your kindness. Without boundaries, kindness can become an empty gesture, a fruitless sacrifice that breeds resentment instead of respect. At its core, kindness is an act of selflessness rooted in empathy and a desire to uplift others. It is a conscious choice to extend warmth, understanding, and compassion to those around us. However, the essence of true kindness lies in its foundation. It must arise from a place of inner strength, not from fragility or a need to appease. To fully grasp this, we must differentiate between authentic kindness and a counterfeit version, often driven by fear of rejection or an unbalanced desire to please. True kindness is an act of courage. It requires stepping outside of one's own ego, prioritizing the well-being of others while maintaining a sense of self. A genuinely kind person offers help, forgiveness, or understanding not out of obligation, but because it aligns with their values. This distinction is vital. When kindness is given with strings attached seeking approval, acceptance, or love in return, it ceases to be about others and becomes a covert transaction. Such actions, though cloaked in benevolence, often lead to disappointment or resentment when the anticipated reciprocation fails to materialize. Strength underpins true kindness because it enables a person to give without compromising their integrity. A strong individual knows when kindness is appropriate and when it might inadvertently enable harmful behaviors. For example, there is a significant difference between helping someone who is struggling and continually rescuing someone who refuses to take responsibility for their actions. True kindness involves discernment, asking, "Will my actions uplift this person or inadvertently harm them in the long run?" Answering this question honestly requires inner resolve and the courage to sometimes say no. Another hallmark of genuine kindness is its independence from external validation. A person whose kindness is rooted in strength does not rely on the reactions of others to affirm their worth. They do not seek applause or gratitude for their actions. Their satisfaction comes from knowing they acted in accordance with their principles. Conversely, when kindness is driven by a need for approval, it often falters under criticism or indifference. If someone's kindness wavers when it goes unnoticed or unappreciated, it reveals that their actions were not truly selfless, but rather dependent on external affirmation. True kindness is neither passive nor weak. It is not about avoiding conflict or always saying yes to maintain harmony. Instead, it involves the fortitude to do what is right, even when it is challenging. For instance, consider a friend on a self-destructive path. It may be easy to enable their behavior under the guise of kindness, reassuring them that everything will be fine or avoiding confrontation to maintain peace. However, real kindness may require having a difficult conversation, setting boundaries, or even stepping back to let them face the consequences of their actions. These choices are not easy, but they are acts of strength in service of the other person's ultimate well. Self-respect is crucial. Kindness devoid of self-respect often devolves into mere civility, where one prioritizes the needs of others to their own detriment. When kindness arises from a well of self-worth, it becomes balanced and sustainable. It recognizes that while helping others is indeed noble, one's own well-being should not be entirely sacrificed in the process. This equilibrium is vital because a drained and resentful giver is of little use to anyone. True kindness flourishes from a sense of inner abundance, the acknowledgement that one possesses enough emotional, mental, and physical resources to give without impoverishing oneself. The ability to exercise restraint is another hallmark of genuine kindness. There are moments when withholding immediate comfort or assistance can be the kindest action one can take. Consider a parent disciplining a child. While it may seem kinder to shield the child from the consequences of their actions, doing so robs them of valuable life lessons. Similarly, in relationships, kindness sometimes requires allowing others to confront their struggles or mistakes, rather than rushing in to rescue them. This form of kindness demands wisdom and the strength to endure temporary discomfort for the sake of a greater good. True kindness fosters empowerment. It aims not to create dependence, but to uplift others so they can stand on their own. A kind person does not act out of pity or superiority. They act from a place of genuine care and respect for the other person's potential. This kind of kindness encourages growth, resilience, and self-confidence in others. It stands in stark contrast to misguided kindness that seeks to shield individuals from every difficulty or inconvenience. Empowering kindness involves helping others recognize their own strength, often by stepping back and allowing them to discover it for themselves. Disrespect often stems not from an inherent flaw in kindness itself, but from how kindness is perceived and interpreted by others. Human interactions are complex, influenced by societal norms, personal experiences, and psychological instincts. When kindness is offered repeatedly without boundaries, it may inadvertently signal to others that the giver is willing to tolerate behaviors that should not be accepted. This miscommunication is a primary root of disrespect. At its essence, disrespect frequently arises from a misunderstanding of the giver's intentions. Acts of kindness are often viewed through the lens of power dynamics. In many cases, people instinctively perceive relationships as a balance of strength and vulnerability. When one person appears excessively accommodating or eager to please, others may interpret this as a sign of weakness, even if the kindness is offered with pure intentions. The absence of boundaries can create an impression of submissiveness, and for some, this perceived weakness invites exploitation, as they interpret the lack of resistance as permission to take advantage. Another factor contributing to disrespect is the absence of reciprocity in many relationships. When kindness is extended without expectation, or a demand for mutual respect, it can foster an unbalanced dynamic. For example, if someone consistently goes out of their way to accommodate a friend, colleague, or family member without asserting their own needs, the recipient may come to view this as the natural order of the relationship. Over time, they may begin to devalue the giver's efforts, perceiving them not as acts of kindness, but as obligations. In their attempt to be selfless, the giver inadvertently creates a scenario where their contributions are taken for granted. Human nature also includes a tendency to test limits. When someone is consistently kind without demonstrating the ability to say no, they may invite others to push boundaries. For instance, a coworker who always agrees to take on extra tasks may eventually become the default choice for additional work. What begins as gratitude for their willingness to help can evolve into an expectation and later entitlement. This progression is not always malicious. It is often a natural response to established behavior patterns. However, the outcome remains the same. The kind person becomes a target of disrespect, as their generosity is no longer appreciated but assumed. Another contributing factor is the imbalance between outward kindness and inner confidence. People are perceptive and often respond not just to actions, but to the energy and intent behind them. Kindness offered from a place of insecurity or a desire for approval is fundamentally different from kindness extended with confidence and self-respect. The former may come across as needy or desperate, prompting others to view the giver as less worthy of respect. Conversely, kindness rooted in inner strength conveys authority and dignity, which others are more likely to honor. Societal conditioning also plays a significant role in many cultures. Kindness is often mistakenly associated with passivity or a lack of assertiveness, particularly in competitive settings like workplaces or social hierarchies. In these contexts, individuals who favor kindness over assertiveness may be perceived as weak or incapable of defending themselves. This perception can lead others to dismiss their viewpoints, overlook their contributions, or treat them with condescension. The unfortunate truth is that in some environments, respect is not cultivated through generosity, but rather through displays of strength and boundary setting. When kindness is seen as boundless, it can lose its significance in the eyes of others. The principle of scarcity applies not only to material possessions but also to human behavior. Acts of kindness that are too frequent or predictable may diminish in value. For instance, if someone constantly forgives offenses or consistently agrees to requests, their actions may be regarded as automatic rather than intentional. In contrast, kindness that is measured and purposeful carries more weight because it is perceived as a conscious choice rather than a habitual response. The absence of assertive communication exacerbates this issue. Kind individuals often avoid confrontation, fearing it might jeopardize their relationships. However, this avoidance can lead to unclear expectations and unexpressed frustrations. When people fail to articulate their limits or needs clearly, others are left to guess, often to the detriment of the relationship. Such miscommunication can cause recipients of kindness to misunderstand the giver's intentions, resulting in behaviors that appear disrespectful. Disrespect often arises not from malice but from complacency. People become accustomed to kindness and fail to recognize it as exceptional. Consider a family member who prepares every meal without complaint, a friend who always listens without expecting the same in return, or a colleague who takes on extra work without acknowledgement. Each of these individuals may find their efforts overlooked simply because they are so consistent. Over time, their kindness fades into the background, becoming an unrecognized part of the environment, rather than a deliberate act deserving appreciation. Disrespect can also be fueled by an imbalance of power. When one person consistently gives while another only receives, the dynamic of the relationship can shift. The giver may start to feel undervalued, while the recipient may grow entitled. This imbalance undermines the mutual respect necessary for healthy relationships. Without corrective measures, restoring equilibrium becomes challenging, as the pattern of giving and receiving becomes deeply entrenched. Setting boundaries is an act of kindness that is often misinterpreted as a rejection of connection. In reality, boundaries are essential structures that nurture healthy relationships. Establishing boundaries does not negate kindness, rather, it is a fundamental aspect of it. Boundaries clarify expectations, safeguard emotional and physical well-being, and foster respect. When practiced thoughtfully, boundaries allow kindness to thrive without leading to resentment or exploitation. At its core, setting boundaries conveys self-respect. It signals to others that while you are willing to help and support them, you also value your own needs and limits. This self-respect is contagious. When you demonstrate that you hold yourself in high regard, others are more likely to treat you with the same respect. Without boundaries, acts of kindness may be misconstrued as obligations, and over time, people may come to assume that you exist solely to fulfill their needs. Boundaries prevent this misunderstanding by making it clear that kindness is a choice, not a requirement. A key reason boundaries are vital in kindness is that they define the conditions under which help and generosity can be offered. Consider a friend who frequently requests financial assistance without clear boundaries. You may feel pressured to say yes each time, even if it strains your own finances. Over time, this dynamic can lead to frustration and resentment for both you and your friend, who may come to rely on you without addressing the root causes of their financial issues. Setting a boundary, such as limiting how often you lend money or offering support in non-financial ways ensures that your kindness remains sustainable and does not enable harmful patterns. Boundaries are also crucial for maintaining emotional balance. When you consistently prioritize the needs of others without considering your own, it can lead to burnout. This is especially true for individuals in caregiving roles, such as parents, teachers, or healthcare providers. Professionals in caregiving roles often require immense compassion, but they must also possess the ability to say no when necessary. For instance, a parent who enforces a bedtime for their child isn't being unkind. They're establishing a boundary that ensures both the child and the parent receive adequate rest. Similarly, a professional who declines to work overtime each weekend is prioritizing their mental health, ultimately enabling them to perform more effectively in their role. Another reason boundaries represent an act of kindness is that they cultivate trust and predictability in relationships. When people clearly understand your limits, they are less likely to unintentionally overstep them. This clarity minimizes misunderstandings and fosters stronger connections. For example, if a colleague knows you are unavailable for work-related calls after 7 p.m., they are likely to respect that boundary and plan their communications accordingly. This not only alleviates stress for you, but also prevents potential frustration for your colleague, who would otherwise risk interrupting you. While kindness can sometimes come at an inconvenient time, setting boundaries is also a way to model healthy behavior for others. Many individuals struggle with overcommitting themselves due to a misplaced sense of duty or guilt. By establishing and enforcing your boundaries, you demonstrate to others that it's possible to be kind without resorting to self-sacrifice. This can be particularly influential in close relationships, where your actions set the tone for how others approach their own limits. For instance, a friend who observes you making time for yourself, despite a hectic schedule, may feel inspired to do the same, resulting in a healthier dynamic between you both. Boundaries also ensure that kindness remains genuine rather than performative. When you agree to something you genuinely want to do, your kindness is authentic and heartfelt. However, when you say yes out of obligation or fear of disappointing someone, your actions may carry an undercurrent of resentment. This unspoken resentment can gradually erode the quality of your relationships. By setting boundaries, you allow yourself to give freely without hidden frustrations, ensuring that your kindness is both sustainable and sincere. A common misconception is that establishing boundaries will hurt or disappoint others. While it's true that some individuals may initially react negatively, in the long run, boundaries actually strengthen relationships. They create a framework of mutual respect and understanding, allowing both parties to feel secure in their interactions. For example, a friend who respects your need for alone time will likely appreciate your company even more when you are together, knowing that your presence is a choice rather than an obligation. Boundaries also serve as a form of kindness to yourself. They protect your time, energy, and emotional well-being, allowing you to invest in what truly matters. This self-care is not selfish. It's a necessary foundation for extending kindness to others. When you neglect your own needs, you risk becoming depleted, which can hinder your ability to support others meaningfully. By setting boundaries, you ensure that your kindness is not a finite resource, but rather a renewable one. Moreover, boundaries empower others by fostering accountability and self-reliance. When you consistently step in to solve someone's problems, you may unintentionally stifle their growth. Setting a boundary such as declining to take on tasks they can manage themselves encourages them to develop their skills and confidence. For example, a manager who establishes clear expectations for their team and refrains from micromanaging enables employees to take ownership of their work, promoting independence and growth. The combination of kindness and wisdom has the potential to transform relationships. Kindness by itself is a valuable virtue, but wisdom provides the discernment to apply it effectively. This ensures that kindness fosters mutual respect and strengthens connections. Without wisdom, kindness can be misinterpreted, misused, or misplaced, leading to frustration and imbalance in relationships. Guided by insight, however, kindness becomes a powerful tool for building deeper understanding, resolving conflicts, and encouraging growth. One of the most critical ways wisdom enhances kindness is by helping individuals recognize when and how to act. Not every situation calls for the same type of kindness, and responding thoughtfully is essential. For example, comforting a friend in grief requires a different approach than addressing a coworker's repeated lapses in responsibility. Wisdom allows you to assess what the situation truly needs and adapt your kindness accordingly. In some instances, this may mean offering support and encouragement, while in others, it may involve holding someone accountable for their actions. Wisdom also teaches us the importance of listening and observing before acting, ensuring that our responses are both appropriate and effective. Many well-meaning acts of kindness often miss the mark because they stem from assumptions rather than a true understanding of another person's needs. For example, offering unsolicited advice to someone grappling with a tough decision may come off as intrusive instead of helpful. A more thoughtful approach would involve asking questions and listening intently to grasp their perspective before offering any suggestions. This kind of considerate kindness demonstrates respect for the other person's autonomy and nurtures a sense of trust. Another way wisdom enhances relationships is by helping to balance kindness with boundaries. While kindness encourages us to give, wisdom reminds us that giving must be sustainable. Relationships flourish when both parties feel valued and respected, and wisdom helps identify when an imbalance starts to form. For instance, if one person consistently takes without reciprocating, the relationship can become strained. Wisdom guides the kind individual to address this concern directly, expressing their feelings honestly while maintaining compassion. This equilibrium ensures that kindness does not turn into a source of resentment or exploitation. Incorporating wisdom into kindness also aids in navigating conflicts with grace. Disagreements are an inevitable aspect of any relationship, but the way they are handled determines their impact. A wise approach to conflict involves using kindness, not as a means of avoidance, but as a way to find common ground. For example, instead of reacting defensively to criticism, a wise and kind person might acknowledge the other person's feelings and seek to understand their concerns. This approach diffuses tension and fosters open communication, strengthening the relationship even in challenging times. Wisdom also ensures that kindness is empowering rather than enabling. While it's natural to want to help others, it's crucial to consider whether your actions are genuinely beneficial in the long run. For instance, constantly solving someone else's problems may provide temporary relief, but can ultimately impede their growth and independence. A wiser approach might involve offering guidance or support, while encouraging the individual to take responsibility for their situation. This type of kindness promotes self-reliance and builds confidence, creating a stronger foundation for the relationship. In relationships, wisdom enhances kindness by fostering empathy and patience. It reminds us that people are complex and that their behavior is often influenced by factors we may not fully grasp. For example, if a friend repeatedly cancels plans, it's easy to feel hurt or frustrated. However, a wise and kind response would involve considering whether they might be dealing with stress, anxiety, or other challenges. By approaching the situation with empathy and striving to understand their perspective, you create an environment where open communication and mutual support can thrive. Wisdom and kindness also teaches us the significance of timing. An act of kindness delivered at the wrong moment may go unappreciated or even cause harm. For instance, offering unsolicited help to someone who values their independence might feel patronizing rather than supportive. Conversely, waiting too long to extend kindness during a moment of need may leave the other person feeling neglected. Wisdom helps us recognize the right moments to act, ensuring that our kindness has the most positive impact. Moreover, wisdom encourages self-awareness in the practice of kindness. It prompts us to reflect on our motivations and ensure that our actions are genuinely altruistic rather than driven by a desire for recognition or control. For instance, someone who offers help solely to feel superior or to gain favor may inadvertently harm the relationship by instilling feelings of obligation or resentment in the recipient. By cultivating self-awareness, wisdom helps us practice kindness authentically and free from hidden agendas, fostering trust and sincerity in our relationships. Ultimately, Wisdom allows kindness to become a transformative force by prioritizing long-term outcomes over short-term comfort. This might involve making difficult choices that prioritize someone's growth or well-being over immediate gratification. For example, a parent might enforce strict rules for a teenager, knowing that this will help them develop discipline and responsibility, even if it causes temporary friction. Similarly, a manager might provide constructive feedback to an employee, recognizing that honest criticism is more beneficial than empty praise in the long run. These acts of tough kindness, guided by wisdom, create opportunities for growth and improvement, strengthening the relationship over time.